Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh WrestlePlex. Now, here is, pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Murder, Death, Kill.
Oh!
Mark Tipton.
Murder, Death, Kill. Once again, a very interesting moniker for Mark Tipton, but once again, not one that really fits. I'm pretty harmless myself, but I do appreciate the moniker, as always, this week, and it certainly does fit within the direction we're going on this edition of the 30-minute Midas Touch podcast. Because what we want to talk about is something that, as a fan, this is the perspective I come from, is kind of a love-hate relationship, I would say. I'm of two minds on this. It depends. It's very situational on how I respond to this idea, and we'll get into this. Now that I've waffled around about it and beat around the bush, what we're wanting to discuss is the subject of death matches in professional wrestling.
Yeah, and this comes from death matches are at the forefront of everyone's mind right now. Nick Gage's Dark Side of the Ring episode, companion with his appearance on AEW against Chris Jericho. These things are trying to make the death match scene more mainstream by doing this, and surprise, surprise, folks, I do not like death matches.
Yeah, I think everyone pretty much saw that perspective coming. They're not surprised. And I will get out of the way my conspiracy for the moment. Given Chris Jericho's involvement with the Dark Side of the Ring and so forth, is it possible that Nick Gage being chosen as someone to be a part of the Labors of Jericho or whatever it was, the build-up to the match with MJF, the labors he had to go through, that Nick Gage would happen to be the person who was one of those fighting. I mean, and they may have used that to kind of raise his public notoriety prior to that show coming on, or around that show. Is that possible?
Yeah, it was actually, they did that after the thing.
They did it after, okay.
They did that after.
All right.
But, yeah, and that's kind of what I've been upset with about Chris Jericho over the last couple of years, is just that it's like he's throwing everything he's learned out the window sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I understand having to reinvent yourself. I understand having to change with the times, so to speak. But at the same time, you still have to be true to what got you there and the things that you were trained upon originally. And I don't remember ever seeing Stu Hart cut anybody with a pizza slicer. No. So, and I think that's just Jericho trying to be in with the cool kids. You know what I mean? Like, right now to me, he feels like that 50-year-old guy that was wearing skinny jeans because he sees all the kids wearing skinny jeans.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel about it.
Well, I guess I don't want to profile Chris Jericho, but he does like to refer to himself as the demo god and that sort of thing, where he tries to, and I don't think it's necessary. He has had a very successful career, had a lot of notoriety, a lot of success. I guess a bit of a devil's advocate here is, could I say, one of the things I've seen is that could it have been his experience in Japan? Because basically in that match with Gage, he was portraying his Painmaker character, which was something he developed in a match with Kazuchika Okada, in New Japan, which certainly has a very different style and presentation of professional wrestling than, say, Stu Hart or some of the other things that he's done there. Could that influence be something that he just wanted to explore?
It's possible. And also, you know, another thing that helps this move to the forefront of people's minds is there was another Dark Side of the Ring episode about FMW, which was a Japan-based, deathmatch company. I think, was Jericho a part of FMW? I think he was.
I believe he may have been there for some period of time.
Yeah, just off and on.
He appeared for a couple of different promotions there, and FMW may have been one.
Wing was another one, I think.
Yes, there are a couple. And when you say FMW, I believe Terry Funk appeared for them several times.
Yeah, Terry Funk was a huge part of that. And like I said, like when I think death matches, like okay, once upon a time I did like death matches. I actually this again date myself pretty well here, but
Okay.
I tape traded
Mm-hmm.
to get the Mick Foley
IWA one?
the IWA one.
Ah.
I tape traded to get that whole tournament.
Okay.
So I sat back and watched that whole tournament, and as a teenager, yeah, it was fine, no big deal. But now looking at it as a professional and an adult and someone with different eyes, it's like, and even that though, I'll say this, like they did some brutal things in those matches,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing to the level that people are doing nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he fell off a ladder into the barbed wire, right? But like, they're not. There was a death match a couple weekends ago where they actually cut off someone's finger.
Oh no.
Yes, and there's some debate over whether it's a work or it's a shoot, but a lot of people seem to think it's a shoot. This guy got his finger chopped. They used bolt cutters.
Oh.
And they think he did it for the business.
I'm sorry, I just had ignorant overload. That's insane. I'm glad I had missed that one. There are parts of the professional wrestling industry that I'm blissfully happy to be ignorant of, and those sorts of things is one of them. I real quick to get in the pitch for those of you who were not around during the IWA tournament. They had deathmatch tournaments. This was a promotion in Japan. It was one of the ways that Mick Foley, and this is part of my problem, Mick Foley, who I would probably consider my favorite, I guess, wrestler of all time on a personal level. And I'll try to explain that some other time. People get a little look at me crossways when I say that, and I understand. But it's part of where he rose to prominence because of his appearance in those. You mentioned the Terry Gordy. I believe he had one or more matches with Terry Funk in one of those, and I want to say it was in the mid-'90s, 93 to 95, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I could stand to be wrong, but it really did allow Mick Foley to kind of make a name for himself because of his participation in the lengths he went to in those matches. But they certainly did push the limits on where professional wrestling could go. And perhaps it was just a sign of the times. The 90s was a time where, I would say society was a bit more crass than it is today, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's what people ask me all the time. Like, well, what about ECW? What about this? What about that? Those were the signs of the time. You know what I mean? Like, ECW, in my opinion, could not live in 2021. You know what I mean? It's just the way that it was presented on a mainstream level like that is not feasible, in my opinion. And the deathmatch stuff, it's like I said, it's in the forefront of everyone's mind, and everyone's kind of talking about it right now. And it just, to me, it hurts the business overall because it's not about a particular wrestler. It's not about a particular, gimmick match. You know what I mean? It's no build up to anything in particular. It's legitimately like, what can we do to top ourselves now? You know what I mean? I'm going to jump off a 20-foot building. All right? Well, next month we're going to find a 30-foot. And then the next month we're going to find a 40-foot. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just one thing after another.
All right. And, well, I'm trying to think of the appropriate way to say this. Is it kind of a macho contest? I'm trying to say without saying the term that came to mind. But it's almost like, well, let's see. Oh, you can do that. Well, oh, yeah, watch this.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people all the time, like, it doesn't take any magic to stab someone with, a light bulb. You know what I mean? Like, I could pull someone off the street to do that, right?
Right.
So, to me, the whole working aspect of professional wrestling is completely lost in death matches. And I've said this before on this podcast. Ladder matches have ladders. Cage matches have cages. Death matches don't have death.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're already putting yourself behind the eight ball because you can't pay off with what you're advertising. Near death match,
Hopefully.
yeah, near death matches is more accurate. But I mean, still, it's just it seems like like you said, a macho, pissing contest. Was that
That's where I was
That's
going,
where you're
yeah.
going. It just
I try to keep it PG on this side of the table.
Yeah, that's fine. I can venture over to the R side every once in a while. So, yeah, I mean that kind of stuff to me just in general hurts our business as far as just we want to try to appeal to as many people as we can, and what that does is it shrinks our niche.
Okay. I guess kind of what I've been dancing around is I think everyone gets fixated on the death part, but the part that is pertinent to me and probably more pertinent to the conversation we're having is the use of the word match. Because ultimately, what they're doing is still supposed to be a match. They're supposed to be a give and take, something that involves an audience. So really, the question is a death match real wrestling?
Yeah.
Really wrestling?
Yeah, and that's a tough thing. Everyone knows I'm a traditionalist. I'm a purist. That kind of thing. I do think that there are aspects of death matches that can be useful in professional wrestling, but overall, I just think I don't like the mentality of let's see how much damage. Wrestling's tough enough. You understand? Like I've been in 21 years and 3,500 matches, and I've done thumbtacks and I've done stuff like that, but I've never done glass. You know what I mean? I've never done light bulbs. I've never done. I did do fire once, but it was a very controlled environment
Sure.
when I did it.
Well, we've seen that at WrestleMania, for goodness sake.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like I don't think aspects of death matches can really enhance some of the product. But when that is your calling card and every match is blood and guts, death match stuff, I don't see the appeal.
Okay. I guess kind of staying on this line, I'll try to describe so the audience understands where I'm coming from. Ultimately, and what I want is I want it to still be a match. And one of the things that I've seen, just as a viewer, I've seen a few of these things, and I come from the perspective, hey, I'm a guy in the front row. What do I think? I see where some of these quote-unquote matches, and there's a reason I'm using quotes there, is because they don't resemble a match to me. They just end up being two guys trading licks, so to speak.
Yeah, you get this, I get that.
Right.
Back and forth.
Okay, it's your turn, so I'm going to wait for you to hit me with something. And now it's my turn, so I'm going to go find the next object that I want. And there's no involvement of a story. I mean, how many times I've heard professional wrestlers talk about telling a story in the ring, and trading licks is not telling a story from the perspective of a guy in the front row.
Right.
And that's why I say, is this wrestling? Because oftentimes I think it isn't.
Right. I'm we're definitely simpatico on this one. And it's just the overall, like Nick Gage is supposed to be the godfather of death matches or something, right? So it's just, and of course, he went to prison for
Was it
bank robbery.
Okay.
It was actually bank robbery.
All right.
And like when you watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode, yeah, they talk about it and talk about how bad it was and things like that. But like when they talk to his friends about it, it's like, oh, that's Nick. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, wacky guy.
Yeah, look at all those shenanigans.
That rascal.
Yeah, that rascal, exactly. That kind of stuff. I mean, it's just like, there has to be some kind of. I know this is going to be a lost concept on some people, but wrestling is actually supposed to have a moral compass.
Well, ideally there is an identifiable protagonist, an identifiable antagonist who come into a conflict and go to a resolution, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And and we just don't see a lot of that in death matches, do we? We see just like you said, trading licks or your turn, my turn, that kind of thing, and it just doesn't appeal to me. I would be perfectly happy if the death match thing went away. Unfortunately, because of guys like Chris Jericho now and AEW and Dark Side of the Ring, because I forgot about this episode too. They've actually done 3 episodes I think this year on deathmatch related things. Nick Gage, FMW, and XPW, which was the
was that the one run by the adult film? Yeah,
Rob Black.
Yeah, I was not a fan of that one.
Yeah, I mean, and they try to do ECW on steroids is what the guy said, and that's ridiculous to think about, right? Like ECW was already wild and crazy, and they tried to turn the volume up on it. That's one where Vic Grimes almost died off the scaffold when New Jack threw him off. Yeah.
May rest in peace.
May rest in peace.
Yes, bless his heart. I won't say all appropriate things, but I'll disclose my bias here. New Jack is one professional wrestler who scared me just to watch him in the ring.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
He frightened me just the way he went about his business. I watched some of them and enjoyed my share of his matches. During the time, he was certainly an attraction. But sometimes he did strike fear to me just watching, and I couldn't imagine someone in the ring with him.
Yeah, of course, the thing around here in Tennessee is that the famous video with him and Gypsy Joe.
Okay.
Where, Gypsy Joe is, at this point, Joe's in his 70s, I think. I used to work with Joe back in the Paducah days when I first got started, and he was this guy. I mean, I knew he was somebody, but I wasn't really familiar with his career when I first met him. And then when I was watching that IWA, of all things, I was watching that IWA King of the Deathmatch thing. They brought him on there and gave him like roses and kind of like inducted them
into appreciation.
An appreciation night for Gypsy Joe. And I was like, holy shit, I wrestle with this guy on Sundays. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So Joe, apparently this was in East Tennessee or Middle Tennessee. They were working Joe and New Jack, and Joe, 70 years old, he was still a tough as nails kind of guy, and he took a lot of punishment, but Jack felt like he was no-selling some of his stuff, so Jack went with a baseball bat, like an actual metal baseball bat, and was legitimately striking Gypsy Joe, 70 years old, in the head and back and neck and everything. It's a pretty vicious thing to watch, but Joe took it. You know what I mean?
Okay, sometimes your co-host needs a minute to cringe.
Right.
Just my imagination of what that for a man of that age, because as I mentioned, New Jack did scare me. Let me I guess I need to get a little bit more on the devil's advocate side, because there were aspects of this style of wrestling that I did not necessarily have a problem with, and we've mentioned ECW. They were the promotion that really made this popular, at least in the United States.
I wouldn't consider them death matches, though.
Well, they were hardcore, and they did have, they had the Taipei glass fist match.
Yeah.
They did do elements of it, but I want to cite them as an example of a company that I still liked, although that particular match I'm not fond of. That's part of the reason it sticks out in my mind. Right. Is that ECW was still wrestling. For all you want to say, I guess I could steal the line, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman is a guy who I appreciate, and he knows how to appeal to me every time he's on the microphone or involved in anything. And although ECW certainly employed a lot of hardcore, and the term deathmatch did come up in ECW, and this will be, let me cite this as an example. This is kind of where the term deathmatch has covered a variety of styles. Because what I want to go back to, what you're describing, what Steve Austin would call a bunch of violent crap.
Yeah.
I've got ECW on the mind now.
Yeah.
As opposed to in ECW, I remember they had a series of what were called death matches that involved super crazy, Tajiri, and in instances they Little Guido. I'm sorry, the last name. It just left his last name left my mind. But at different times, and they would take turns. It would be a Mexican death match, or a Japanese death match, or an Italian death match, or whatever it was.
Right.
But it involved some combination of two or sometimes all three of those guys. Then they had matches that involved tables and chairs and all sorts of things. They were essentially hardcore matches, but at the time it was called death match, and I loved those matches. I had a very positive. So if you ask me about if that's what you're talking about when you say death match, I have no problem with those in ECW. I have no problem whatsoever. However, some of the things you're describing now are a little bit different.
Well, of course, there's different. How should I say this? Different point of views for the term death match. For instance, a Texas death match is a very famous territorial tool.
Sure.
Where this is it's designed to be the end all be all of whatever feud you're in, and basically two guys wrestle, and you have to beat the guy to the point to where you pin him, right? And then after you pin him, he can't answer the 10 count, so it's like a double win almost. And there's been some that have had 30, 40, 50, 60 falls. In these things because they beat the hell of each other. I think there's one that actually on record with the Funks, a tag one with the Funks in Texas that actually went like 90 minutes or something.
Oh, goodness.
A 90-minute death match. And then that's what I'm saying. Like, these were death matches, but not nothing
Right.
like the ones that are today. They were brutal. Maybe they used like the table at ringside, but they didn't break it probably, and they just maybe used like some wood folding chairs. You know what I mean? It was just random kind of things like that, but it was nowhere near the planes of glass and the light bulb tubes and the bed of nails and all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I guess the differentiation for me when we talk about the XPWs, among other types of organizations that have gone, to me the differentiation was that they did not have the foundation in wrestling that ECW with Paul Heyman or the Funks or some of these other people. It was still based in wrestling, and they had that foundation and incorporated tactics as a part of their matches and their performance, but not necessarily what these others did that were, in my opinion, imitations of that without the foundation of professional wrestling.
Yeah. So XPW, for instance, Luke Hawk talked about how he was Altar Boy Luke back then in XPW, and that's where I guess one of the places he got one of his original starts. And he took a chair shot from somebody, and he had slightly put his hand up to protect himself with the chair shot. And then when he got to the back, Rob Black, the guy we were talking about that owned XPW, just lit into him like, this is fucking XPW. We don't put our hands up, and did all this kind of stuff. And then the next event, or some of their time soon after, they did a thing where they chained up Luke with both hands.
Oh no, so he couldn't.
And they
legit,
went to town on him with the chair. And he says, they said I had a severe concussion. I couldn't go to sleep. I was miserable. He said, I think I still have an indentation in my forehead. I think they cracked my skull. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of stuff you're talking about because, like, he said Jerry Lynn, after he put the hand up on the one, Jerry Lynn pulled him aside after he heard Rob Black. He said, no, you did the right thing. You know what I mean? Right. That's what you're supposed to do.
Well, there's one opinion from adult film producer, director, whatever he is, and one from an actual professional wrestler. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, then it also comes down to, and we've had this problem for decades in wrestling, it's letting people with little to no experience run wrestling companies. I understand them maybe, investing in a wrestling company. You understand? But, like, the actual decision-making process should always be a professional wrestler. One of the problems with AEW, obviously.
Okay.
As he wears an AEW hat.
Yeah, okay, we may swerve back into this. To sum up on this discussion and XPW, which still, angers me when I think, because quite frankly, as simply as
There's one more story I have to tell you about XPW.
okay, well, quite frankly, my opinion on that organization was it was neither professional nor was it wrestling.
Yeah, it was out there. But here's this is just Rob Black. Apparently, he's I don't know. He's a pussy, I guess, is the best way to put it. Because basically what happened was, they're one of their top stars, the Messiah, had an affair with his wife.
Oh.
And he got blackballed from the company, right?
Oh.
And Rob Black, even said, "I'll buy you a one-way plane ticket to Michigan. Just get out of California," that kind of thing. And Messiah's answer was, "Well, I'm not running." You know what I mean? So it was kind of one of those things like, whatever, right? So then, apparently, two large men kind of walked into Messiah's house.
Oh.
And, beat him up and ended up cutting his thumb off.
Oh.
Like his right thumb. And, he was able to kind of fight out a little bit once they cut it off, and, they ran out, and then he passed out from blood loss, but he still has no thumb, But, and, of course, the thought process is, of course, Rob Black had something to do with that.
Of course.
Of course. He paid the guys to do it, and,
Sure. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, picking a fight with I'm sure in that industry, he had access to ample amounts of money to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, in that situation, if another man is messing with your wife, you handle it. You know what I mean?
Well, ideally, but throughout history, that hasn't always been the case.
No, it's not.
There are people who are in that business.
Yeah, I know.
Or at least were. It's not. I don't know how popular it is now, but that feeds into ugly stereotypes of you can insert reference to mob movie here,
right?
Where you hire a guy to take care of some business for you. That just further cements my opinion of that organization. I just thought it was people who had no idea what they were doing, trying to imitate someone who knew what they was doing. In the case of ECW and Paul Heyman, on AEW, I would like everyone to. This is where I'm certainly going to be the more positive AEW side of the table during this podcast. And on this, I would point everyone to say that, yes, the Gage match was there and it was a thing. And there was a controversy with the pizza cutter, which I'm still not totally sure wasn't semi-intentional to have a pizza commercial air while he was doing the pizza cutting.
Oh, my God.
Because it happened during a commercial break and they were doing picture-in-picture.
Yeah.
And there was I think it was Domino's Pizza ad that aired while he was doing that.
See, if you were an advertiser, would is that what you would want?
See, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay, well here, let me go with this. There are people, and I would almost cite the Eric Bischoffs of the world. The controversy creates cash. If I can get that out, it's not an opinion I share. But after that happened, and Domino's quote unquote protested about that, that event happening while their commercial was airing, it gained mainstream news. It was carried on the news. News outlets around the country carried it and advertised Domino's. Yeah. So, could it have been, if you believe in that line of thinking? Maybe.
Yeah, the controversy creates cash thing. It's true, but there is a line to it. You know what I mean? If it's going to create, all this publicity, but at the same time it's such negative publicity that it doesn't help you, it actually hurts your company. Imagine if they had done the pizza cutter thing and then Nick Gage had brought out a box of Domino's and pile drove Jericho on it or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Had a straight sign or something inside of it.
Yeah.
A la Tommy Dreamer used to do. Yeah.
I mean, that kind of stuff, I don't think they'd be happy with that either. You see what I'm saying? Because...
Well, would they count that as product placement?
I don't know. I think they just don't want... I don't think any legitimate business like that, especially restaurants, want their product associated with blood and guts.
I would not think so. Although occasionally in the world of advertising, I see things where they'll do a commercial that has nothing related to their product or company whatsoever, and just totally off in left field, and then their logo appears at the end. And I don't. I have seen that happen on a number of times, and I don't know. So advertising certainly baffles me. I am no marketing expert by any stretch.
Well, I just think about it like I love Quentin Tarantino.
Okay.
Right, he's my favorite director
Sure.
in movies, but his style is very unique to himself.
Right.
And
it can be violent.
it can be very, very violent, very vulgar sometimes.
Certainly.
in a lot of things. So you're not going to see a Quentin Tarantino movie featured on McDonald's when they do like the movie stuff with the cups and stuff like that. You're not going to see that because they understand that there's no correlation between what they're trying to do and what he's trying to do. Right. So that's kind of my thought process. Like if I was in charge of Domino's and my job was to sell pizzas to families at affordable prices, I don't think that I would want Nick Gage out there cutting people with, pizza slicers while my commercial's airing.
Okay. Yeah, you wouldn't get Pulp Fiction figurines in your Happy Meal. That was the image that came to my mind.
Well, Pulp Fiction's very tame now by modern day standards. It came out in '94, but I mean, it's very tame considered. Django was the one that was like it was very vulgar and very violent and almost hard to watch sometimes.
All right, and very quick, my quick defense of AEW. For those of you I will say this: if you want to see another presentation of AEW, I've recently watched Bryan Danielson versus Dustin Rhodes on AEW have a tremendous match, and if you have not seen it, please go out and watch it.
And it goes back to what I've been saying, what we've been saying on this podcast the entire time we've been on here. Old school still works. If you sell everything, then it still works. I made the thing on my Facebook earlier about CM Punk. CM Punk is one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling right now, right? And he's going out there and he is selling. Yes. He is showing the locker room, this is how you get over. This is how I got over, and this is how you still get over. And he's going out there and selling. Bobby Fish beat the living shit out of him on Wednesday, right?
Right.
And it was believable. And it felt like Punk was in danger. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then eventually he had to go to sleep. 1, 2, 3.
Well, sure.
And that's the concept of make your opponent strong, so then when you beat him, you're strong.
Exactly.
It's a very novel concept. But we are over time, just slightly, 32 minutes this week. So, for myself, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and my co-host, Murder, Death, Kill, Mark Tipton, coming to a bank near you.
I'm harmless.
Yeah. No, First Citizens, you better watch out.
Oh, okay.
You never know when, wily Mark Gage is going to show up, try to rob you. But thank you and goodbye.